Imagine this. Some of the cells in your body are saying I'm female, while others are saying I'm male. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, it's actually a real medical phenomenon. Let's break it down. Hey everyone, in today's video I'll explain how it's possible for a person to carry both male and female genetics at the same time. We will look at the science of chromosomes, how biological sex is determined, and then dive into two fascinating mechanisms that make this happen. If you enjoy clear, science-based explanation in simple language, hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. First, let's talk about what normally makes someone genetically male or female. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. One pair are the sex chromosome. Female usually have 46 XX, like 2 X chromosomes. Males usually have 46 XY, 1 X and 1 Y. Now here's the key player. On the Y chromosome, there's a gene called SRY. If SRY is present and active, it triggers the development of testes, then produce hormones like testosterone and AMH, which push the embryo down the male developmental pathway. If SRY is absent, the embryo follows the default pathway, developing ovaries and female structures. But here's the catch. Chromosomes are just a blueprint. The causal outcome depends on many factors, whether genes switch on at the right time, whether tissues respond to hormones properly, and even tiny errors in early cell divisions. So what are the chances of being born male or female? Every egg from the mother carries one X chromosome. Each sperm from the father carries either an X or a Y. About 50% of sperm are X and 50% are Y, so basic odds are about 50-50. In real populations, slightly more boys are born. Around 105 boys for every 100 girls worldwide. This small difference is due to natural biological factors and survival rates in early pregnancy. So normally, sex is determined at conception by whether the sperm contributes an X or a Y chromosome. Okay, so we've talked about how sex is normally determined by chromosomes. Double X usually means female and XY usually means male. But here's where things get really fascinating. What if a single person's body isn't made of just one genetic blueprint? What if some of their cells are saying I'm female, while other cells are saying I am male? That's not a science fiction plot, it's a real phenomenon in biology, and when this happens, we say the person has both male and female genetic cell lines inside their body. Now, you might be wondering, does that mean they look half male and half female? Not always. The truth is, it can show up in very different ways. Some individuals look completely like one sex on the outside, but genetically their cells are mixed. In other cases, it may affect their reproductive organs, their hormones, or even give them unique physical feature. And here's a big question. How does this even happen? Well, there are two main mechanisms that can explain it. Mosaicism, one embryo, but a mistake in cell division creates different cell lines. Chimerism, two embryo, two sets of DNA that merge into one single individual. Both lead to same result. One body, two genetic identities. But the way they happen is totally different. And the difference is actually mind-blowing. Let's break them down one by one. Now let's dig into the first mechanism. Here's the idea. You start with just one fertilized egg, one zygote. Normally, as that single cell divides again and again, every new cell is supposed to carry the exact same set of chromosomes. It's like photocopy the same page over and over. But sometimes, early in development, something goes wrong during one of those cell divisions. A chromosome might get lost, duplicate, or rearranged. When that happens, the mistake isn't in every cell. It's only in the new cell line that came from that faulty division. And that's the birth of mosaicism. Some cells in the body keep the original genetic code, other cells carry the new altered code. So instead of being genetically uniform, the person becomes a patchwork, like a floor made of different tiles or a painting made of tiny different colored pieces. Now, in the context of sex chromosome, this could mean some cells are 46XX female pattern, other cells are 46XY male pattern, or even mixes like 45X and 46XY, where some cells lost an X chromosome. What does this look like in real life? It really depends. If mosaicism is limited to blood cell, the person might never notice. Only a DNA test would reveal it. If it affects reproductive tissues, then the gonads might develop as mix of ovarian and testicular tissue. Sometimes mosaicism affects skin cell, creating unique pattern or streak on the skin that follow line of cell growth called Blaschko's line. The proportion of XX and XY cells also matters a lot. If most cells are XY, the person might appear male, but with subtle differences. If most are XX, the person might appear female, but with hidden variation internally. And if it's close to 50-50, the individual may have ambiguous genitalia or mixed gonadal development. From a medical perspective, mosaicism can raise important questions about infertility, since gonads may not function typically, health risks, certain types of gonadal tissue, individual can have a higher risk of developing tumors. So mosaicism shows us how just one tiny error in single cell division can ripple forward, creating a person whose body is a genetic mosaic, part female, part male, depending on where you look. Now the second mechanism is even more fascinating, and honestly it sounds like it's straight out of a science fiction movie. It's called chimerism. Here's how it works. Instead of starting with one embryo, you begin with two spirit fertilized eggs. Think of it as two siblings conceived at the same time, what we usually call fraternal twins. Normally those embryos would each grow into a separate baby, but in a very rare cases something extraordinary happens. Those two embryos fuse together very early in development, and instead of two babies, you get one. The result? One individual who carries two completely different tests of DNA in their body. So imagine that. One embryo was genetically female, the other embryo was genetically male. When they merge, the new person develops some tissues derived from the XX cell line and other tissues from the XY cell line. This is what we call a chimera, a single person who is in a way two individuals combined into one. Some people discover they are chimeras because they have two different blood types at the same time. In other cases, DNA from their blood doesn't match DNA from their reproductive cells, meaning a mother could give birth to a child whose DNA doesn't appear to match her blood, but actually does match DNA from her ovaries. Sometimes chimerism shows up on the outside. For example, visible patches of skin or hair with different colors, or streaking patterns in the eyes. And when it comes to sex development, if the gonads develop from both cell lines, the chimera may have both ovarian and testicular tissues. Depending on which tissues dominate, they might appear male, female, or somewhere in between. How doctors find out? Genetic testing is key. What makes chimerism special is that different tissues can give completely different DNA results. For example, a cheek swab might show XX, while a blood test might show XY. In some famous cases, people only found out when they were chimeras during fertility testing, organ donation matching, or even legal cases involving DNA testing for parenthood. In mosaicism, everything starts from one embryo, but errors during cell division create variation. In chimerism, two whole embryos fuse into one, so person literally carries two distinct genomic. That's why chimerism feels almost like a hidden twin living inside one body. Alright, so now we've looked at both mosaicism and chimerism. On the surface, they can look very similar. In both cases, one person ends up carrying a mix of female and male genetic cell line. But the way it happened, their origin stories are completely different. Mosaicism starts with one fertilized egg, one zygote. An error happens after fertilization during early cell divisions. Some cells stay normal, while others carry mutation or different chromosomes numbers. In terms of sex chromosomes, this can create a mix like XX and XY cell in the same body. Think of it as a painting made from one canvas where certain parts get painted in a different color. Origin. Mosaicism comes from errors within one embryo DNA pattern. In Mosaicism, all cells share the same origin, but some have mutation. In Chimerism, the body literally holds two distinct and unrelated tests of DNA. Diagnosis. Mosaicism can be subtle and hard to detect, often requiring sampling from multiple tissues. Chimerism can be dramatic. Different tissues may show completely different DNA profiles, even conflicting blood types. About the frequency, Mosaicism is more common than Chimerism. Chimerism is extremely rare, with only a few hundred documented cases worldwide. For your imagination, picture two embryos side by side. In one case, one embryo makes a mistake during division, that's Mosaicism. In the other, the two embryos literally merge into one, that's Chimerism. Both create a body that's a blend of genetics identities. Sometimes the person looks fully male or female. Sometimes their features are mixed. And sometimes you wouldn't even know without advanced genetic testing. This condition also reminds us that biological sex is more complex than just XX or XY. Genetics, hormones, and developments all interact in ways that can create incredible diversity. From a medical point of view, identifying Mosaicism or Chimerism is important. Some of these individuals may face challenges with fertility or higher risk of certain tumors in their reproductive organs. That's why early diagnosis and follow-up with medical specialists is key. And from a human perspective, these variations are a natural part of biology. Respect and care for every individual is the most important thing. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumb up, subscribe and share it with someone who loves science. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.